Good afternoon. This is our Offsite Construction Series, which is the second and last Tuesday of the month. It is presented by my company, Modular Sure Site, in Denver, Colorado. We are a general contractor in residential and commercial construction for modular construction, I guess you could say. So thank you for being here. We have very special guests. Can't wait to introduce them. It's going to be very exciting. But first, we're going to talk about our partners, and I am going to let Scott talk about Mountain View Window and Door. Take it away, Scott.
Thanks, Audrey. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, whether you're watching this live or watching it on YouTube afterwards. Marketing Director of Mountain View Window and Door, window and door company based in Denver and Grand Junction, Colorado. Very much in the offsite and modular construction space in this past year. Love working with forward-thinking construction, architecture, engineering professionals. So if you're in or around Colorado and you have window and door needs, we are here.
Sweet. Thank you, Scott. The next one is Greg with 303 Development. Greg and I have worked exclusively together in the Denver metro and mountain areas. He is a traditional home builder, now doing commercial projects and other projects. He uses several forms of offsite construction, zip panels, panelization, and also modular. So we're excited to have 303 Development be one of our partners. Our next partner is Urbaneer, and we actually have the owner of Urbaneer on with us today. Hey, Bruce, why don't you tell us a little bit about Urbaneer?
Hey, Audrey, thanks so much. And yes, just calling in. It's kind of late in the day and I'm on the go here between commitments, but so glad to be able to join. And just tell you very briefly, Urbaneer is a company that my wife and I founded, and she's the design brain behind it, and I'm the innovator. And we started doing multifamily units a few years ago and have pivoted to being, I think, what we could say is one of the leading brands for compact homes, fully integrated with our reconfigurable interior that allows a 500 square foot unit, for example, to live like 700 or 800 square feet with our approach. And we are producing both offsite with several manufacturers across the country, and then doing on-site panelized, componentized projects as well, and with a focus on ADUs for the moment, accessory dwelling units, but also moving quickly into doing pocket neighborhoods and other compact infill type projects, resort locations as well, vacation. So very exciting, and we have units on both coasts, and we're filling in the middle of the country literally as I speak. So thank you very much, Audrey.
Yes, it's exciting. I have actually joined their team, and we are seeing some great progress in that space, and it's very exciting to see the transformation of Bruce and Brenda's company. So thank you, Bruce. We're happy you're here. Our next partner is the Art of Construction, and Scott's going to lead the way on that.
Thanks, Audrey. So I'm also the executive producer over at Art of Construction, the premier podcast about the world of construction. We also have technology and architectural development and real estate services. Currently doing some modular projects all across the state of Colorado. Got a really cool video series coming out very soon. You can find us at the aoc.us. So thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you very much. And now our lead presentation, Modular Factory Design and Development, with our very own Jason Carter. His company is called themodcoach.com. Interesting enough, I actually had the pleasure of meeting Jason this year at a function in Dallas. It was the prefabrication event. It was a 3-day event, and just learned a tremendous amount from Jason, not to mention the amount of people that we kind of all knew in our circle. So we're super excited to have him. I'm going to let him go ahead and explain a little bit more about himself and his company, but we couldn't be more pleased to have you here. Thank you so much for making the time in between your other commitments, running around the world, trying to develop all of these factories. We're happy that you're here, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Glad to be here and try to get on as much as I can when Modular Sure Site has these events, because it's always nice to see what else is going on in the country in similarity to what we're doing at the Mod Coach. And so I'll just go ahead and get started and talk a little about what we're going to go through today. I'll talk a little about myself, the factory types, key development factors in considering what that looks like and how you do it, the product design considerations, how automated will the factories be, kind of the trends in growth and what I've seen over my career, and then what I see coming now, we're up against, and what's coming. So my name's Jason Carter. I've been in the industry since 2002, started with in the manufacturing industry with Oakwood Homes in the Carolinas, and I was quickly absorbed in with Clayton Homes, and then Berkshire bought Clayton, and I was able to be blessed enough to travel the country with all their different factories and see how these manufacturing operations worked and all the other things. I ran and actually started my career in the retail side and managing retail locations for them, and always wanted to get into the factory side. And so worked my career towards factories. So today, the Mod Coach, we put together and assemble teams on my team that will take developers that have land, that have projects. We'll do a feasibility study on the project for you, decide if it makes sense for modular at the time. Some projects do, a lot of them don't, because they've already gone so far the other way. So we do that and can help you through that. As we get into the design stage, we can really take over the whole project for a developer, from the land side to structural engineer, civil engineer, architectural side. Really design. We've got a lot of projects that have already been done modular, and don't think we know it all, but the design for manufacturing is key versus trying to take a project that's been designed another way and make it work. So we've assembled a team over the last year or so that can help with all of those attributes to design development. A little bit of a plug for the Mod Coach, but we love building factories. But as you can imagine, when you build these factories, we teach that the entitlement process and understanding what you're going to build, how you're going to build it, and how you feed the factories. Some factories are very small. We'll get into some of that, some are very fast. So essentially today I've got multiple factories that we're working on in style and in the volumetric side. One would be steel frame, where you're building steel shells or steel studs, 1A construction. Two would be wood frame, where we're building 5 stories and down, as well as some panelized groups. You may have heard of Blueprint Robotics. It's one of probably the best semi-automated closed wall system out there today in the country. And then bathroom pods. We see a lot of bathroom pods. Those can sometimes be built in or sub-assemblies in larger factories, but there are actual factories that just build bathroom pods. Excuse me.
So Jason, do you have your presentation up? We'd love to see it.
Oh, sure. Yes, I thought I was sharing. I apologize.
That's quite all right.
Are you not? Let me start share. Sorry about that.
It's all good. I love listening to you. It's awesome.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we are good to go.
Okay. Okay. So just to mention just some things we'll go through, and then I'll leave some questions and answers for the end, but a little about myself and then the types of factories. Modern methods of construction have arrived, and we're here to assist. That was a plug for the Mod Coach. We really will take anything that comes across our desk. We look at hospitality projects, hospitals, restaurants. We've built Golden Chicks, Starbucks, really all different types on our architectural, structural, and civil side. That's the other side the Mod Coach does, besides factories, I guess is what I would say. And we talk a little about that down in the bottom. When we get into the factories, we also offer review of factories and leanness and how the factories are operating. So factories that have been around a lot, and there are quite a few of them, not just building IRC, but other product as well. So there's volumetric factories that I had mentioned before in steel frame. So the steel cage, 1A construction. So Chicago, for example, you can't build anything with wood. Everything needs to be steel. So with wood prices being so high recently, right, steel kind of really looks good in some aspects, and it's almost a wash today. but we think wood will come back down in late November, December, January. It should come down a little bit more. So most of the factories that I am currently working on and building are wood frame factories that'll build 5 stories and down of wood. Both will build residential and commercial product in those factories, but most of it will be commercial. We'll talk about a few of them and why. And the other thing that I see a lot of is panelized. There's a lot of component sub-assembly groups and just wall panel systems and groups out there in the country. So there's a lot of that growing. But one of the best, I think, in the country is Blueprint Robotics in Baltimore. Uses a Weinmann system. It's German. It's not robotic. It's semi-automated. It actually drives and will close a wall. So fire suppression's in there, electrical, insulated, and cladded on both sides. They don't do volumetric, but again, it'll hold a different piece of offsite, right? And then bathroom pods. I see a lot of talk of bathroom pods, startups in bathroom pods, because it can affect other parts of the industry that are already doing stick frame or other type of components. And then they can plan on and drop in some of these pods. And as you can imagine, kitchens and bathrooms are intense to build. They're pretty heavy in labor. And when you put a bunch of them on a project site, spread all out, right? Those are some things they can take out of their mix. And so we see bathroom pods continuing to grow. Single trade, so you have single family factories. I'm not here to plug factories, but I sure like a few that stayed in my head over my career. Simplex, Westchester up in New York, Dynamic up in Minnesota, very high-end residential factories. Stratford, they've been around a long time. They build 200 homes a year, and they're really heavy, nice residential homes. Been around from, each of them over 20 years, some 40. So they build really nice quality homes, and those will always be there. They're not going to change. They're not going to go robotic. They're not going to go automated. They'll maybe put in some component pieces to help them with quality and maybe employee level, but as far as lifting heavy stuff, but that's that factory. There's not a lot of those being built, but they're out there and they exist. But commercial, multifamily, hospitality, medical, schools, student housing, senior living, those are the big pushes. Those are the big factories that are going to be opening up. And mostly you hear factory OS, right? Those guys are all building multifamily apartments because the housing is just terrible. Minneapolis is the same way. We need multiple factories in these markets to change the supply. So I see a lot of that going on. And I started out in the beginning talking about the $3 billion groups out there that build. It's Clayton, it's Cavco, and then Champion Skyline with the new merger. I helped Champion come out of bankruptcy, ran factories for them in the Northeast. Big company, but they're vertically stacked a little like Clayton in Berkshire, but not as much. But those are big builders, but they build HUD code homes, and then they build some IRC, and then they play around with multifamily a little bit. But all those factories generally are building multiple products in them. So you can't really get a grip on multifamily in a factory that builds different product throughout its factory other months of the year. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's difficult. So it takes new developers, new factories that I'm building and other groups are building and starting out, that some have been on Audrey's show here. So the type of product design considerations that we're faced with when we build new factories is, are we going to be a manual factory? Is it tables that we just built, or does it have a table with some clamping mechanisms to square the walls at least, or how does that look? So there are new factories that are opening up that'll be very manual. And my favorite, where I see a lot going today, is semi-automated, where we're lifting heavy materials with assist. We have bridges and clamping stations, bridges that will run over the tables and nail pattern and screw pattern, more of a semi-automated. I see a lot of that going right now to fully automatic. Again, not robotic, but like a Weinmann system from Germany, which will run a bridge, cut, saw, do some things over a bridge, but it's still a bridge. And then fourth is robotic. Europe is very much robotic, but we don't see a lot of that here in the US. There's one factory, Autoval, Rick Murdoch's factory, that will have quite a few robots in it. Very expensive, very expensive to control and operate and tune or program to new designs. So benefits of each one: manual, right? It's manual. You've got labor. I think it's a tough way to go, because we know it's hard to find people to go swing hammers and cut, right? Most folks can't measure. If myself and two of my partners went and measured something with a tape measure, we both think we're pretty good with a tape measure, but we probably had different marks or different pieces, and that kind of adds up to measurements being wrong, right? So it's tough to build manual factories and staff those factories today. Most of what I see that I'm involved with are semi-automatic, approaching phase twos that would be more fully automatic, and approaching some robotics. So semi-automatic is really the way we like to go, and I see a lot of factories going. Excuse me. Most popular in the USA and Europe, I would say Europe is really more robotic, more automated. They use some different materials as well, CLT, glue lams. They really don't build the same way we build here. It's a different construction method, period, as far as the envelope, but they are more robotic for sure. And that's because of the labor and the shortage of labor and other things we may not get to talk about today, but we can if someone asks me at the end. What's best for commercial and single family plants? Well, running one product through it, right? Having a factory that builds commercial and then single family is difficult. The best product to run through commercial factories is repetitive, much easier to build, in my opinion, and others would probably say it's much easier to build commercial product in the factories than residential. Single family plants that are building residential are really working on a much more customized designs. As much as they try to design great models that people may or may not like, everybody in the US wants something of their own. They want to change it. They want to do something to it to make it their own. And that's difficult for a single family plant to gain that efficiency in labor and materials when you're constantly changing and doing customization. So it is difficult. Whereas commercial side, it's more repetitive of the same stuff. Most of the cladding commercial product goes on site. So it's much easier to get the leniency and the repetitiveness in a commercial factory. Any questions on that before I go?
No, I like that you were talking about that. I guess one of my questions is, when you're looking at technology, and I'm not talking about technology of just the production design, but what about technology of like, when you're talking about different platforms and stuff to, building the whole process all the way through, are those things that you're seeing technology change? We were specifically talking before the show about Autodesk and how they're integrating some things into their development. Are you seeing that same thing when you are designing these factories, Jason?
Yes, great question. Thank you, Audrey. Each of the factories that I'm involved with and my clients will all use Revit. They'll all have architects. The big C's, or the billion-dollar groups down below, don't. They use CAD, very manual. So each of the groups will use Revit, Autodesk being the backbone, and inter with that, right? Other parts of Autodesk will be put together to make all the software for a factory. And it runs about $100,000 a year to budget for a factory to run its software on a big factory. Right, and that's all the softwares: Revit, Autodesk, Manufacton, Offsite, Modular, whatever platforms clients choose. It's up there. A lot of clients don't realize how much software they need. But today's clouds, you change NetSuite, right, versus having to serve servers in your factories and maintain $30,000 pieces of equipment every 4 or 5 years. So it is coming along. But absolutely, every one of the factories that I'm building and working with clients on will have CNC type machines. We don't run saws with skills. Our saws are plugs for companies. Again, IP4 Hornet, Tiger Stop, Sucup with their 650G saw, which will actually drill holes in the studs as well, stud stitch, etc. So there's some really cool machinery that we are putting in these semi-automated factories to really help the quality that you would maybe think you'd get at a robotic factory, but much faster. And still employing people, right? My son probably go work a computer screen that's going to run 9 sets of codes that's going to cut 9 walls, for the mill that day. But he's probably not going to want want to go pull a skill saw and start sawing something, right? So that's happening now. We're putting those in now. There is one robot that will go into the factories that I'm involved with for multifamily factories that'll be cutting quartz or stone, and that's a Bacchus system to actually wet saw and cut their own granite, their own quartz. If the factory's modeled big enough, they can buy slabs of stone at a real good price and cut it themselves. But they have to control their designs and control what they're building forward thinking, right? Because you're investing in a robot that's going to cut every day for you.
Well, and I think that's a really good, a little good segue about product and materials, that you're seeing materials like we were talking about cutting stone and hard surfaces, because when we're looking at modular, 20, 30 years ago, we're not using the same type of materials. So it's interesting that you're coming across this type of software. And just to be clear about CAD and BIM, how would you describe the differences between those two?
Well, my sons never saw like box televisions, or black and white. I mean, I had color most of the time. I'm 48. There's a little black and white out, but it's literally that much difference when you consider BIM and a well-designed product and all the stakeholders being able to review BIM and through Revit and just the communication to bring a project from conception, from dirt to fruition is night and day. It's like working in the black and white world of trying to watch TV on the box with 1080p today. That's the difference.
So CAD is more like two-dimensional, and maybe BIM is more like
black and white,
like where you can actually see
two-dimensional.
Yeah.
You can't work in the same softwares together, right? The stakeholders can't work in a file together. That it's transferred, moved back and forth. So that's really one of the catalysts that have really drawn the big groups and stakeholders is the BIM side. And the big behemoth elephant factories they won't get there, because it's not their model. They're going to build what they've always built. They have it at their corporate headquarters and they make some designs with it, but they're not operating factories with it.
So how factories are transitioning, and we have all these, there's the three big that you were talking about before, and they've been around, let's just say 30, 40 years. And now you're integrating all these brand new people that are coming into factory and factory design and development. Where are you finding, everything's changing so fast. Where do you find a lot of your factory components? Are you finding them in Europe and then designing and bringing those ideas here? Are there United States manufacturers that are, becoming more popular because we're starting to see this big surge? Did it all start with like single trades and multi-trades and manufacturing in the MEP world, and then bringing it out to, single trades or the single family routine or commercial? Where do you find like information about new development? Because it's kind of new, isn't it? In the last 5 years, don't you think factory expansion in this space has really changed considerably?
Yeah, I would tell you that in 2013, Gurdon, Palomar, Champion, and another big group brought a hotel room to the, and someone could correct me if they'd like. I think it was 13 or 15, but I think it was 13. Everyone brought a hotel room to the big trade show in Florida, right? Bought a completed hotel unit, and they were asked to bring it for the show, right? And they picked the winner. And they brought it and displayed it there at the hotel convention, like IBS, for example. Well, that's really what kicked it off. I mean, we've been doing multifamily sporadically for years, but not to the level that it has. But I think that really kicked it off when Marriott, and everyone would say Marriott honestly drove that marketing name and marketing that concept. And it really helped today, but they don't want to build anything stick. They want everything, offsite, modular, volumetric specifically, right? So they understand it. They've learned the curve and they know how it works. We just got to teach the rest of the country that. And it's coming, guys. It's coming. I'm working with big developers that build big name stuff that are all trying to figure out parts and pieces of bringing this in. And they all know that volumetric truly is the way to go, because you're not shipping air, you're shipping appliances, carpet, everything's in these things. They're finished. We do everything in the hotel room except put the sheets on the beds. I mean, we literally send them finished except the corridors. So when you put that in West Texas and you put that in a city, they both benefit, right? Because you can't find any work in West Texas or in rural markets. And when you're in the cities, you're competing against the big unions and you can't find labor because they've got the best labor. So what do the small guys do, or the average builder do? So sorry to.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
But materials and finishes are definitely changing. There's some cool stuff that are going on in these factories. I had a very long Zoom earlier today on just that conversation about ceramic tile and why it's not a great thing to put in the bathrooms. And I get why they want to do it, but materials are coming, you know, not to prop another component, but Dumawall, you know, a PVC style tile that's 100% waterproof, that's light, and you never have to clean grout or tie, you know, it's a better performing product, but it's new. So anything new, people first think, oh, what's the negative? And it's not really that. I'm creating lightness in the pod. I've got a better warranty on this product. So we'll try it. It's going in I'll show you the project on one of these slides here in a minute, but it's not for everybody, right? And so ceramic is an enemy in a volumetric factory. Hospitality they don't even really use tile, except occasionally on floors. It's primarily mincy marble, which is a sheeted SFI product, like compressed SFI, like countertops. It's a composite material, and that's what you get when you go to a hotel. That's what you're seeing. So those products are kind of slipping into apartments, et cetera. But mostly it's new composite materials that I think will take over on the volumetric side, because people like us will push it. It's slow in a factory, right? Even with Schluter and their fast techniques today, I can only build a shower a day. And with a Dumawall, I can build 3 showers a day or more, right? And still have ceramic feet. I'm walking on like a true ceramic floor, but the walls are Dumawall. So I thought I'd show some factories. Here's a large kind of a factory that is going to be in Florida. Groups raising all their final funds, but it's a mega factory with a phase 1, phase 2 approach with very large development of 1,000 acres that'll be fed by this factory. We kind of talked a little bit about trends a minute ago, but the last 5 years, multifamily and commercial has really driven this industry, hospitality. I have large land developers looking at offsite as well and partnering with groups to form modular or panelized systems, and they're all kind of growing together. The private factories versus those larger commercial builders, like I was talking about earlier, the big C's, if you want to call them that. But it is private money. It's private developers. It's builders that know they can control the cost and they can control the time. And that's the critical 2 pieces using, when you utilize offsite components or volumetric specifically, it's the time savings and the controls that you have that you don't have. And they're losing more of that by not being able to find good labor. Next 10 years, I think robotics will come, but it won't come until cost of control engineering comes down, because it is still very expensive to program these things, and you're trading off 12 engineers for staff in a factory, right? And you're getting rid of people, bringing in the machinery to the consistency, but it is slower, blah, blah, blah. It's a good argument to go both ways, but it is coming. And it's because we just don't have skilled folks. And then the other thing that I think is a bit of a hindrance and can help is building code compliance. Building codes are all over the place nationally. You know, we build in one state for the 2015 IEC code, but they inspect to the 2012 IECC code for the non-volumetric piece, the vertical that is all the stuff prepped for the modulars, everything on site, for example, by the county would be inspected to a lower code. So it's those things that jam up the programming, right? Because they can't program that same design everywhere. Everything's a little bit different. So those things coming together over the next 10 years, I think that will come. I get asked this a lot, so I thought I'd just throw some raw numbers out here, and we can talk about it at the end. We're almost done here. I got some pictures for everyone to see. But the average size, beginning of a factory, a good standard size, starting out, it's 150,000 square feet. These smaller 50, 75,000 square foot, 100,000 square foot factories are building, you know, only single family residences, and they're not going to build more than 200 homes a year, maybe 250 if they have some controls and a big development that's driving the consistency there. And it's, you know, they start at 15 million and up. 15 to 50 million is my range of what I'm looking at. And that's a big spread, and that's manual, good deal. Building that, you know, we stole somewhere, you know, we got a real good deal on it, like $10 a square foot. We spend a couple million fixing it up, you can be in that range, and then on up to a completely designed factory like we do. Time to plan and build, it varies. But if all things are working in cohesion together, it's a 3 months planning in designing the factory itself through our team, because we've done it before, but working with the local owners or investors, whoever is backing it. And then 12 months to build the building and tool it, depending on the backlog. If, for example, if you went with a robotic system, we could be a year and a half on just getting the pieces here, and then another 6 months programming it. So that changes a little bit, but on standard, on a semi-automated factory, manual factory, it's that number. And it's really, Audrey, growing all over the place. It really is. I think we hear and see about some of the big names because of the tech world in San Francisco with, some of the tech groups that are kind of messing around with volumetric, right? Amazon invested a little prefab plant up in Oregon, or I think it was Oregon, maybe California, sorry, for their Amazon stuff, and then Google investing in pieces of it. So, but the whole country's on fire. I think the surprise to see in the last year or so is the South. I'd say Texas, Florida, those markets, Southern California for sure. We'll start to see a lot more modular offsite construction. You mentioned earlier in the intro, you met with me at Advanced Prefab in Dallas. I think that was their 4th year. And if you look at their stats, it went from like 200, 500, all of a sudden 2,500 last year. So a lot of people and the stakeholders are really looking and getting into this. So I think the whole country is really, really starting to get into volumetric. This is a project called the Chloe. This is 360 units. It is a 7-story building, and it will be 5 floors of wood. Down here in the bottom corner to the right, you can sort of see it will be a type 1A construction with steel, but it does have a 3-hour cap, pretension concrete planks that will sit on here. And then it's really cool pool right here, as you can see, retail space. It's a Texas wrap, as we call it. There's parking lots in the middle of this thing for parking, but a very big project. And I hope it's nominated in 2022 for permanent residential modular, because it's a really cool engineering project and a really cool looking project for a downtown Dallas. It'd be the biggest in Texas. So very excited to be working with that project.
So when you were designing this, what was the initiative? Was it about bringing, what was the concept? Was it multifamily and then bringing this resort style feeling to it and multi-use? Like, what was the idea behind it? It's very unusual.
Yeah, it's 2 hands. If you look closely, it's 2 hands. The design team worked on it. I just made sure that it worked in our programming REMs, for volumetric. But it is for a downtown metro Dallas, so it fits that artist district. So we have a lot of districts in the Dallas markets for different looks and feels. And I don't know if you guys, anybody on the phone here gets to Texas much, but there's a lot of multifamily in Texas being built.
How did they design with that pool in there? So is that whole first level deck all built on site, and then everything adds on top of it, or how does that work? Yeah,
so this whole area, if you can see my mouse, will be stick built under that cap. The edges here will be volumetric, and then the top layers will be volumetric. But this will be all on site, and we'll bring it to the living units to it. And in the middle of this, if I could show you the designs, which I didn't get permission from the developer on the inside yet to show all those programs, but the center is parking. It's 2 layers of parking levels in the middle of this thing, so apartments go all the way around it. Call it a Texas wrap.
Wow.
It's big. 360 pods.
Wow, that's crazy. Good
Yeah,
for you
cool.
guys.
Yeah. And there's the inside finishes that we're going to be using. I mentioned earlier this F label right here is not tile. That's a Fibo or a Duma wall. So it has a synthetic composite that will go on the inside of that shower. So a real cool layout, very modern.
Yeah, it's nice to see finishes that look really super cool that people are going to love.
This is a 240 unit apartment project that's going to be built up in Minnesota. It'll go into a factory that's being built up here, and it will go on in 2021. So a really cool L design with, there's a wellness center there, big, large pool in the front down here. And then over here is restaurants and of course upstairs, etc. So really cool project. There's the other side, kind of looking at a different angle.
And so when they're building these type of things, go back to that one design. I see different cladding materials. Are those cladding materials built on site, or are they actually going to be designed from the factory and the factory is going to ship them out with us?
No, so this will be on site. We'll probably do some of this piece right here around the window areas, but most of this will be on site.
And the decks will be on site as well. It's not created inside the design as cantilever.
This design is not. This design will have those bracketed in behind the wall, and they will hang those on site.
Wow, it's really.
The next one I show you will be. So we can do those porches. I can show you a really cool project in Austin that we did where we cantilevered an 8-foot deck in the factory. Okay, we use a little steel and wood in that, and we built the whole system in the main frame of the box, allowing us to cantilever that 8-foot porch out without any posts or pier beams. So when you looked at the project, when we got them all set, you just see these 3 big decks, 3 stories of 8-foot decks just hanging out there. Contractors just had to come in and pour concrete and do their piece, and they were done. So it can be done. This particular design, it's easier for us to do the backing in there, and then they just hang those on site with ivy lifts.
Amazing.
So just depends on the design and the look. These, of course, this is workforce housing that we will be building in West Texas. It's called Vista Park Living. And it's 9 buildings for workforce housing. And all of this, most of this will be done in the factory, right? So we'll always do as much as we can in the factories that are able to build. And all these factories that are out there don't all build the same way. And they all have limits and limitations that they can or can't do. So you got to understand who and what to ask to build what. But this is workforce housing, and it's much needed in West Texas. And there you can kind of see the site plan, big pools in the middle of park, all that stuff comes. And then they've got 9 buildings out here. And this project should go online in November, December this winter as well. And that's it. That's all I had. I wanted to be able to some time for anyone that's here want to ask questions.
Anybody have any questions? We'd love to hear them. Well, I'm going to ask a question. Arteca, is that how you pronounce it?
Yep.
So Arteca Designs, do you actually work, do they work with all factories? Do they just work with your factories? How does that exchange work?
Sure. So I do a lot of work with Jeff Morrow from Arteca. We've been working about 4 or 5 years together now, almost 5 years this year. A lot of these, 3 of these projects are his, but Jeff will work with other factories and other groups as well. Yep.
So when you are designing and having new people, because you and I know that there's always conversations where people are always excited about building their factory. Some of the main big considerations obviously is land, right? Then you have what kind of product you want, right? And I guess the other question that I'd like to know is, in that first conversation, I don't think people really understand not only like the fund to raise it, right? But just to run it. How do you know how to orchestrate what teams in those lanes, and how does that work? Do you do consulting in that area as well? How to frame working into the factory and the labor and that whole program? So
we will help the feasibility. So in the beginning, we do a feasibility study, and the feasibility study on the factory is really understanding what they're going to build, what is the product, how much of it, the velocity, and how long. And based on that, you design the factory around that product. From those smaller single family type deals, but the bigger factories today, we're being asked to do mostly multifamily, commercial, and we can do townhomes, which is a big part of master plan development that we see. We see hospitality, we see multifamily, we see townhomes continue to grow, and we can build those in these same factories. But the size of the factory will really be driven by the developer. And I teach it I repeat it almost like a broken record, that they have to understand what it takes to develop the land and entitle the project to be buildable. It takes on average 12 to 18 months to get one of these projects designed, started, and off to the races. It's just how long it takes. And developers will tell you what it takes for the normal side, and it's similar to the stick built. So, but now you have to time this into a factory setting. The idea is a factory never shut down or even isolate an empty station in the station. If there's 24 stations in the factory, or like a Rick Murdoch's Audible, 40 something stations, you can't drain those stations. You got to keep them full, because if you drain them, you have people standing around, a robot's not working, and you end up losing money. So you can't build for 3 months, shut down a month, build for 3, shut down a month, build for 3, shut down a month. You won't make much money. The idea is to never drain the factories, keep them running all year long.
And so when you're putting those programs together in particular, Jason, and you're having those discussions with the factories, how do you lead that into? So you have a brand new factory. Are you doing pre-sales? Are you working with other developers? Do you have a strategy going into this so that you can kind of explain these? Because I think I feel like people kind of go into it naive sometimes, thinking that it's just so easy to do. It's not that easy.
No, it's not. I mean, building the factory is actually not that hard, right? You can find consultants, you can find groups, people like me, or you can build a factory, right? But to understand what it takes to feed it year in, year out, staff it, train it, develop it, the teaming, the software, all that stuff's still moving. You know, you can't just, it's not like a McDonald's franchise where you can get up, call McDonald's, and they got all your software ready to go. Here, the software still is being developed on the fly, right? So it's challenging to say the least. And a lot of people don't understand it. There are failures out there, and some of us try to call them when we see them, because we've seen it's about a 4% fail rate, I think, in the industry. People would think it'd be higher, but you just hear the bad things. But 4% fail rate's not that bad considering the industry, when other industries have a higher fail rate.
So the demand and the size of the factory really does decide on the demand, right? Because there are lots of factories that are 50,000 square feet, and they're running like really well, very streamlined. I'm in Denver, Colorado. There are 2 factories here locally, and I think that they're working very efficiently. And so when I look at that, when you're looking at another development that's coming to town, which we're excited about, and you're telling them that they need a larger factory, why is that? Is just because you're seeing the demand that they already can fulfill? Or you talk to the client, you identify with the client what their specialty is, and then kind of build it from there? How does that work?
Everything depends on, what they're building. Again, the 2 factories you may be talking about, at 50,000 square feet, not building more than 2 a day. And at 2 a day, 220 days a year, build days, you're looking at 440 pods. Well, that's not a whole lot. Right. And that's if you're staying full, never shutting down, working 2 a day, 5, your full days without any downtimes. And so the demand in Colorado, for example, is 10x that of affordable housing needed. So there needs to be a lot more factories, more housing developments using offsite techniques. If it's panelized or even volumetric, anything's faster than just stick building. And the only way to stop the rise of price increases, in my opinion, is to just change the supply curve, because developers aren't going to build it cheaper. Their margins aren't going to be shrunk. They're just going to extend that cost to the end user. So we got to change the supply curve. We've got to build a lot more product. And I just think that's coming with big developers and the big builders out there, Lennar's, D.R. Horton, and Tekra. These builders Tekra's building for big builders now, sending out all their walls and floors and roofs. So, as one of our last weeks, or last 2 weeks ago, he had Amy on, and she talked about those big developers and contractors absorbing and dealing already in those parts and pieces of offsite. So they'll absorb it quick and get it fast, because they already know, they're so big, they know where they need to change, and it's framing, labor, etc. So they'll start to move that needle. But the size of the factory depends on the group that can entitle it. What does your BD team look like? Really, what can you build? What can you sell to build? Because, you have, again, 18 months to put an average building up. And you have 5 or 10 of those in the hopper at all times, which means you're losing. You're going to lose some deals because the timing just doesn't work. And if you have a factory that only builds 2 a day and 360 units on this Chloe, do the math. That's in the factory 190 days. It's half a year or more for some factories, right? So you got to have big factories. You got to build 3 million, 2 million to 3 million square feet a year in order to make a dent.
So my next question comes to some of the factories in the last, probably the last 12 months have been going bankrupt. Why are they seeing those issues? Why is that happening when we're in such a massive building market right now?
Undercapitalized and not understanding the process, not understanding the entitlement process, not understanding the stakeholders to get it from concept to CFO. Those are the key reasons why.
All right. Well, I think that's all my questions. I don't know if you have anything else that you'd like to close with.
No, I'm good. Glad I could share a little bit about factories.
Well, I'm glad that you shared this information because you and I both know it seems like this huge amount of interest. We're seeing more, the thing that I think is interesting, 3 years ago when I started my little Modular Sure Site company, I was begging people to talk to me, builders, general contractors. I was telling them about this whole new influence, and now they're starting to knock on my door, which I think is interesting. But one of the areas that I think is really, kind of growing are general contractors that are looking to start doing factories. Like the big companies here, like PCL, you've got Turner Construction. Some of these big companies are now starting to not only do offsite, but they're actually even talking about doing factories. Are you seeing the same thing, or is it still just the land developers knowing that they can fulfill the quantities of homes that they need to fulfill?
No, Mortensen Builders is doing a light gauge steel factory here in Minneapolis for their own projects. So I think that you'll continue to see the big groups like that pull in pieces and build and subcomponent whatever they can and take it on offsite as much as they can within their bandwidth. But from development to design, I think the new factories that everyone is seeing and hearing about, the Tatum Tech in Texas, AVA in Minnesota, Rise, this Florida mega factory. This thing's almost 400,000 square feet. It's not fully robotic, which means it'll have even more stations in the Autovol factory. But when these things get going, it'll create that stamp, right, where people will want to replicate it and build more, because it's the only way we're going to get affordable housing. It won't be done the old way. So all the stakeholders will pick up pieces that they can make work within their business models and make that work. But to go truly volumetric, it takes the developments and the designs to go with that. So I don't know. I hope I answered your question. I don't know how far the big builders go. I don't see D.R. Horton like building their own factories. I just see them partnering with the other groups. They're already doing that now. I mean, people, most of Florida's wood construction, 160 million of it in Florida is all panelized, all single family residence, and it's a panelized wood. So, that's there. It's just the next leap to volumetric, but it comes with design and it comes with the codes changing, et cetera. So.
And then one last question I'm just curious about on the labor area for factories. Are you seeing any issues with trying to find people to come work in the factories? Are you seeing that there is a great growth in that arena? What are you seeing on that side, on the labor side?
It's a challenge, right? In the West, right? Factory has to tell you they partnered with unions right out of the gate. They learned quickly they had to. Not every factory will. One of the things we do is we'll run ads in a market just to see, when we look at land or look at buildings, we will run ads and see what the return rate is on those calls, just to see what kind of callbacks we get on jobs posted. So if a market has 3% unemployment, it's a problem, because I think there's a certain part of the economy that are portion of the economy that's just not going to work. So going into a market that has a 3% or sub 3% unemployment rate could be a challenge to bring in talent. But each of the factories I'm involved with, and there's 5, are all big mega factories, or each phase 1 has ability to go to phase 2s. And these guys will build a lot of product, and they're going to be controlling it by design and development and entitlement. So it's just the start of volumetric for single family residences. I think that will continue to be a big impact before the big builders ever. I don't think they'll ever go to it. It's just my opinion.
Right.
But I don't see D.R. Horton, KBUS. I don't see those guys going to volumetric.
Really? That's interesting. Not even in 10 years?
Mm-mm. I don't like design parameters. It's just me. I don't.
Right.
I mean, somebody, maybe one will go to, panelized or kit
Right.
piece cat packs and
Doing something
things
that,
like that. Like they're already kind of doing the wood now as technology and components begin to change even more. Or they get labeled to come in with UL listings here in the country. But no, I think there's just too much creative design and space that they don't want to be limited to what we may or may not be doing in volumetric. So it
awesome.
really has to. I think I really see master plan developments being designed through these developers for volumetric, and all the living components from hotel to multifamily to single family to actual residential homes, they'll all be volumetric by the same factory group that's doing these developments. And these factories can deliver 600 to 800 miles, right? I mean, we know what Ritz-Craft did in Colorado, building in 3 different states, North Carolina, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and sending all those units west, right?
Right.
I mean, come on, that was a challenge, and they did it, right? So 600 to 800 miles is really what we want to be at when we model the factories. But there's always west, right, where some guys are doing some things that aren't normal.
Yeah.
So I would model a factory on that business model.
Well, thank you, Jason. And
Bet.
Jason's with the Mod Coach, Jason Carter. You can find him online and on LinkedIn. He is running a very busy schedule with planning 5 factories right now. So we appreciate your time and giving us some insight, because I think it's a really big live discussion of what's happening now in our industry, especially with COVID and finding affordable opportunities for us to be able to build. Again, I'd like to thank our partners, 303 Development, The Art of Construction, the AOC, Urban Air Living, and Mountain View Window and Door. We always appreciate our partners and so thrilled to have them with us on each one of these little events that we like to have, the first and the second and the last Tuesday of the month. And if you need any other information or want to meet any of our speakers, have some ideas for some shows, please find us on Facebook. The best part is really actually looking for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to be able to help. This is a discussion for all so that we can expand this marketplace and understand a little bit more about offsite construction and figure out how we can partner and elaborate this market into a bigger industry. We hold such a small market space right now, but I feel like it's growing, and in 10 years, it's going to even double and triple. So we look forward to our next event, which will be the last Tuesday of the month, which is actually, I believe it might be October. Let me see. It is October 27th. So we'll be marketing that on all these channels. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And thank you for being here. Have a good night.
Thanks, Audrey. And I will say, if we're still here, we'll have to do some videos of some of the factories. Once we get the shells up and get equipment in, we'll maybe do some live tours in the factory.
That would be an ideal scenario. I'm going to take you up on it, Jason. Thank you.
Maybe Art of Construction can hop in on that as well.
Exactly. That would be ideal. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
You bet. Take care, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.